Welcome to lecture for Crisis Intervention. We'll be talking about disasters. So James presents an ecosystemic view of crisis intervention for disasters, right? Which is derived largely from Bronfenbrenner's ecosystem theory. And it kind of assumes that a disaster is a crisis, like other crises we've seen, but different in terms of the broad effects that it has. And so, if we look back at this isn't a crisis model. This is Bronfenbrenner's model, and we see these multiple systems, which the individual is embedded in these systems, that change over time. Right? So that's the key thing about conceptualizing crisis intervention for a disaster is that the crisis has an impact at multiple levels. And we talk about these levels being, first of all, the microsystem, right, which is the setting that the individual lives in, and people who are immediately close to him or her. The mesosystem would be relationships, connections, communications, links between individuals and systems, and not just between the microsystem and the exosystem. So even though it kind of appears, oh, it's micro, meso, exo, it's not just between those. It also is between the micro and the macro, the exo and the macro, and back and forth. So any kind of links between systems, the mesosystem is there as a kind of this idea for that. And again, these are all ideas, and these aren't things. These are constructs. The exosystem experiences of the individual in another social setting which the individual does not have an active role. So not things that they're typically interacting with, but now may affect them and influence them. Right. So local and state agencies be parts of the exosystem. And then the macro system, excuse me, would be your national and regional systems, but also attitudes, ideologies, behavior patterns, beliefs, and other products that are passed on from generation to generation, right? Which is a way of saying culture. So all of this stuff is embedded in a cultural system. And the cultural system can affect a crisis, a disaster, and be affected by the disaster. And then all of this is further embedded in time, right? So we think about the chronosystem in terms of their proximal and distal effects are different. So the immediate effects and what needs to be done immediately is different than what the lingering effects, 2 weeks later, 2 months later, 2 years later, and what needs to be done at those different points in time. But it's not just from disaster forward. Also, anything that they experience, anything that you do, is going to be in the context of what's happened before. So they're kind of social-cultural history. So have there been disasters there before? Have there been interventions before? And were they positively experienced or negatively experienced? All those things set the stage for what's going to happen now. Right? And there are a couple of different theories about the chronosystem which are interesting in terms of the idea that there may be some sort of typical pattern of effects. One of the most interesting pieces of this, I think, is that part of the pattern effects may include this period of avoidance, where after an initial part where you've got your immediate reaction and then people pitching in and people talking about it, this idea that after a while people don't want to talk about it anymore, and they stop talking about it and they avoid talking about it. And it's not that they're done thinking about it and having feelings; they just don't want to talk about it anymore. Right? And it's for many people, it's a way of transitioning from crisis to what comes next, and they need to stop talking about it for a while to get to the next level. But for some folks who are really having problems with it, this can be really problematic because they still need to talk about it, but nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to hear about it anymore, and a lot of the crisis intervention that's going to happen has already occurred because some time has elapsed, and people are kind of back getting things together. Right? Everything's fine, let's not talk about it. Some people are still struggling. They're the ones that are at risk for PTSD now, largely because people don't want to talk about it anymore. When thinking about these systems, it's important to remember that the levels are interdependent. Right? So it's not just, we have these different systems. Cool. No, they relate to each other. And the way they relate to each other, the influences are bidirectional, right? So when a crisis impacts an individual, that individual is part of a larger system, and so the individual will affect the ecosystem and in some way even the macro system, right? That individual, next time they go to vote in an election, how they vote will may be different now based on their disaster experience, right? We need more federal funding for disaster relief. That'd be one example. But it also goes the other way. Excuse me. Obviously, where larger systems affect smaller systems. Right? So it's not a one-dimensional model. It's one-directional, multi-directional. Okay. So if we're thinking about disasters, these kind of large-scale, really bad things happening, to where even if something doesn't happen directly to you at the time of kind of the crisis originating event, whereas being other crises where it really is about you and it's very personal. With disasters, they can be more impersonal, where the effect is really at kind of maybe the exosystem level, but if you're embedded in that particular exosystem, it's gonna come down and affect you, right? So there's tornado, earthquake, hurricane, whatever, and maybe you were asleep, you didn't even know what happened, right? And you wake up and all this stuff's on the news, and what the hell? And maybe even your house is fine, but you're still going to be affected by this disaster because of all the relations between the systems, right? So maybe now your power is going to be out soon. Certainly, you try to go to the grocery store, not going to be much there probably. For people who don't have anything, they're going to be going there. Maybe the power's out there. Other things that you typically do, not going to be able to do, right? Because resources are going to be concentrated to helping people who were badly hit. Right? Okay, so if we're thinking about disasters this way, with these multiple systems, there's some advice from your author about recommendations for intervention, and not necessarily for what you should do, but in terms of the intervention system. So this kind of coordinated effort of intervention, what should be done. And some of the things are the approach should obviously be interdisciplinary, which is often easier said than done, because people love to prove that their field is the best field and knows the best way to intervene, and they can meet people's needs. And whenever there's a need, it's not about it's not a contest to see who can help them the most. It's let's work together and help them. So whenever there's a disaster, because it's affecting usually many people and at many different levels, you need a lot of different types of people coming in to help. Some mental health, medical, social services, all those things. Construction. Lots of different types of disciplines need to be involved because so many different things are being impacted by disasters. Right? When designing intervention, important not to rely on a single theory, because no theory has emerged as the right theory, as the one that does the best at predicting disaster response or the best at guiding intervention. And if there's not one good theory, it's best to think about it from a lot of different angles to look for any kind of things you might have missed. Right? Just kind of the big picture. Individuals are part of larger related systems, all of which change over time, which is basically what the ecosystemic view is. Right? Also important to remember that individually and collectively we have a need for meaning. And it seems we're arguably driven to find meaning in our lives, especially when kind of big things happen. You drop your phone, you don't know, why did that happen? God, was this a sign? No, not little things, but something big happens. Somebody close to you dies tragically. A tornado comes and rips your house off its foundation and scatters it to the wind. You might be wondering, why did that happen? And trying to find some way to integrate that into your story, individually and also collectively. And that is part of what needs to be addressed in the response to a disaster. Probably not immediately. It's not the first thing. First thing is, food, water, shelter, right? But it needs to be, excuse me, a part of it. and just like for individuals that aren't able to find meaning and don't find ways to work tragic things into their stories, that's what we talk about, kind of PTSD resulting. You can kind of have this cultural PTSD as well, theoretically, where if the culture as a whole doesn't find a way to integrate something into its story, there's this lump under the rug where you've tried to sweep it under, and it's going to cause problems. Something's going to emerge later. Important to have parsimonious intervention because, again, disaster is so widespread in its effects, very, very expensive. And we, obviously, at least in the U.S., we're already in a great deal of debt. We don't got a lot of money laying around. So we got to do things with the least amount of intervention that you need, right? One, because going into more debt causes other problems. And two, you never know when the next crisis is going to happen. If you use all your resources now, there's this big disaster or whatever, let's use everything we have. Okay, great. 2 weeks later, some other city or cities or state or states gets hit with another disaster, and you got nothing left, right? So you use only as much as you need to use. Be parsimonious in allocating resources, which sometimes you hear stories about resources being wasted whenever there's a crisis and there's this kind of initial swell of response. Oh, let's all help, and people send all these perishable food items to the survivors, and the food goes bad before they can eat it because it wasn't coordinated appropriately, and people didn't take the approach of parsimonious intervention. Right? So not being wasteful and allocating resources appropriately. Important for collaboration to occur. You need vertical and horizontal links among system components. That means that your local agency, that's maybe your local emergency management agency, your LEMA, individuals in that organization need to have reliable ways of mechanisms for communicating with each other, right? And then with people they serve. But they also need reliable mechanisms, links, to communicate with the people above them, regional directors above them, state and maybe even national directors above them, both to receive commands, right, but also to give feedback, saying, hey, this is what we need. Don't send us any more dang shoes. Everybody's got plenty of shoes. We need water, right? So you need both vertical and horizontal links among system components. And then the last thing is plan and practice, right? We can't anticipate necessarily when crises are going to occur, but we can anticipate that they will occur, and they occur on a fairly regular basis. Something really bad where a lot of people are going to be in crisis is going to happen more than once a year, every year in the United States, right? So let's plan for it. And no plan is worth anything unless you practice implementing. So doing kind of dry runs and mock things where you say, okay, well, if we do this, is this going to work? Right. So if we can imagine a scenario where we're doing this and then power goes out, then what do we do? Okay, let's practice that. Right. So contingency planning being a big part of it, because intervention in crisis has to be flexible, because you never know which components of a system are going to be knocked out or at least destabilized by the disaster. Okay, so that's for the kind of big picture intervention. But what about for practitioners? Like if you go help, you say, well, Jesus, bad thing happened. I'm going to go volunteer. I'm a mental health professional. I can help. Great, good for you. Go help. When you go help, don't just wait for people to come to you, right? You don't just set up a tent, hang up a sign saying free therapy. Come on in. You're not going to get many people coming. And there's a place for that to some degree, not because people are going to come in to see you, but people may get sent to you if you have an identifiable location. So you do want to have kind of a stable, maybe outpost where people can be sent by other workers who say, wow, this person is really struggling, they need to talk to somebody, or other workers who are really struggling need to talk to somebody. They have to have a place to find you, but you can't just do that. You have to go out and talk to people. And that means often being therapeutic outside the confines of therapy, right? So you're not going to go to people and say, turn on your therapy voice. Hi, I'm Dr. Jones. What can I do for you today? Now, you don't do that. You talk to people like you normally talk to people. Hey, how you doing? Man, this is crazy, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. You doing okay with this? What's going on? And you let them talk to you. But because you are a trained, skilled listener, when they're talking to you, you're not going to be like the next bozo in line at the grocery store who says, "Oh yeah, me too, me too. Let me tell you all about my stuff." Right? You're going to keep it in check, and you're going to be an active listener, using your empathy and all your other skills, and you're going to be therapeutic without sitting on a couch in a room, right? And you can do that. You've got those skills. You can take it out in the world. And we don't do that on an everyday basis. Maybe some ethical problems with that, and you're not going to get paid for it on an everyday basis. But in crisis situations, disaster situations, you take those skills out with you, and you go be a therapeutic force. Right? Similar to that, you do more than counsel. You serve food, you help deliver water, you wash clothes. You do what needs to be done, right? And as a part of a team, right? And that's important, not just because that stuff needs to be done, but because it will also earn you rapport points with your team members, who are the people who are going to refer you, folks who they identified that needed to come talk to you, and also with people who are struggling with the disaster, victims of the disaster, who see you working and helping, and don't see you there as just this ivory tower therapist who wants to talk about how I feel, when how I feel right now is I'm worried about where I'm going to sleep tonight. Right? They see that you're actively doing stuff. It allows them to get a little psychologically closer to you, and then maybe they're going to open up about some things that are bothering them. And important to be flexible, again, because you don't know what systems will be intact, what ones will be stable. So expect the unexpected if you're going to try to do this. Be ready to deal with burnout and fatigue, kind of compassion fatigue, in terms of, when you go into disaster, you think, okay, let's go help these people who've had these horrible things happen. I'm going to go help them. And you're going to do a lot of that. But a lot of what you're going to do is also going to be helping other people who are there to help, right? People who, especially people who miss maybe their first rodeo, and they go in thinking, oh, we're going to go in and people are going to be so happy to see us, we're going to save the day, and they get there, and it's not like that. And they get very quickly through the burnout, compassion fatigue stages. And again, they're not necessarily going to come to you. You have to be vigilant for that, assessing people as you talk to them informally, and intervening, being therapeutic, often informally. And then the last thing is to take care take care of yourself. Right? You can only do so much. Right? And so you've got to schedule things and do things for your own physical health and mental health, even in the context of kind of chaos and disaster around you, because you can't help anybody if you let yourself reach that kind of burnout and fatigue stage. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about, kind of related to helping the people who are helping, is this idea of debriefing for first responders. There's some controversy about debriefing, especially critical incident stress debriefing. And some people saying that, oh, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And basically, it's supposed to be for people, first responders, firefighters, police officers, and also soldiers. Originally developed, although interestingly, in a hospital for doctors and nurses. People that are helpers who see something traumatic. It's for them to come talk about the traumatic event and debrief, right? And the idea that it prevents this traumatic situation from leading to a post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder, right? So the controversy is, some people say it works, some people say, nah, it not only doesn't work, but sometimes it makes it worse. Where people who, if you hadn't made them talk about it, they would have been fine. But you made them talk about it, you created PTSD, right? And there's research showing that for some people, no help, and for some people, got worse. But then there's also research showing, hey, it worked here. And the controversy isn't resolved yet, but one thing that seems to be true, reading through the articles, is that it can be effective if implemented appropriately for the appropriate population. So for who it's used for. So critical incident stress debriefing, not to be used for rape victims. That's not what it was designed for. It's for these kind of first responders whenever they've just witnessed something, participated in something traumatic, right? And then done the way that the original authors have talked about it, and not one of the many modifications that have been done, because many of the modifications have not been empirically validated. Two basic approaches. One will be informal debriefing, which involves 3 steps. Right? You go and you introduce yourself, and you kind of explain what's going to happen. Step 1. Step 2, you ask them about what happened, and so the kind of the facts what happened, and what they thought and felt about it at the time and now. Right? And then the third step, you normalize their responses. Say, okay, yeah, it's normal to think that, to feel that. That's okay, yeah, I've heard that before. And then you provide some education about stress and trauma and stress management. So you may find you experience dreams about this, it may go away, blah blah. People often find it helpful to important after times like this to continue talking with people that they care about. And some people find it helpful to go to church. Some people find it helpful to go work out. Wherever you talk about some coping strategies that work to deal with stress and the importance of doing that. It takes about an hour, and they're potentially good to go. The formal debriefing takes a bit longer, 2 to 3 hours. Instead of 3 steps, you get 7 steps, typically done in a group setting. I don't go through all the steps, but overall, it's about providing education and then also doing some processing. So basically, you go from having them talk about the facts, to talking about emotions and getting that emotional stage, but you don't leave them in the emotional stage, and that's where some of the crisis debriefing that doesn't work and that causes harm. That's where they get into problems. They dredge up a lot of emotions, and then they say, "Okay, I'm glad you talked about that. Goodbye." And no, that's when you pull that stuff out of the box, you got to help them put it back in the box, right? And the way you do that, after talking about the facts, talking about the emotions, pulling it all out, talk about cognitions related to emotions. Okay, when you're feeling this, tell me what you were thinking when that happened, right? Because we can talk to people rationally about their thoughts. You can't really talk rationally about emotions because they're not rational; they're emotional. Right? What were you thinking when you felt that? And then we can correct any kind of distortions. We can again normalize certain cognitions. Well, it makes sense to think that, but now that you're not in the situation, what do you think about that thought, right? And that can help again put those emotions in perspective. Realize, okay, yeah, it was okay to feel that way at that time, but I don't have to feel that way. For the time, I had this kind of irrational thought that was leading me to feel that way. Right? So basically, this allows for an integration of all the components of what happened, what I thought, what I felt, and what I did, and where I am now. And again, making it part of my story, something that happened to me, and not this thing that I can't bear to think about. Right? I think it seems to work if done following kind of the rules for the right people. But I will say more research is needed. Because we need to find exactly what are the rules and exactly who is the appropriate population, because there's still debate about those questions. What's not debatable, though, is that we need to figure something out, because a lot of first responders, a lot of people who are in a help-giving position, see some pretty traumatic stuff, and some of them develop PTSD. By no means all of them, not even a majority of them, but enough that this is a population we should be able to serve. This is what we're trained to do, right? And if we can anticipate that, okay, well, we know that they're experiencing these kind of traumatic events. Let's figure something out to help them before. Let's not wait till they get PTSD. Can't we do something now more preventative? And the answer is, yeah, we can do something. We just got to figure out exactly what it is, and it's probably different things for different individuals in different situations. Okay, that's all for now. Take care.